Hello and welcome to the Coaching State. My name is Tony Husted. I'm an International Coach Federation Master Certified Coach. I've spent 22 years in the field of professional coaching. Most of those years I spent as a senior facilitator for a large international coaching school. And most recently, I've spent 7 years as the director of training for a level 1 and level 2 program. I recently surpassed 1,000 mentor sessions facilitated. And I am taking what I have learned through all of my career of coaching and I'm bringing it together into this series that I have called The Subtle Art of Coaching. For today's video, we're going to be discussing filler language. And I'd like to start this conversation off by just asking a simple question. And that question is, how does a client know that you're listening? How does a client know that you're listening? Now, I've had many a coach, students, and even experienced coaches say, well, I acknowledge what they've said. I say words like, yeah, okay, great, uh-huh, oh. And I hear from coaches, I hear a lot of filler language that's dropped in. The coach asks a question, the client says an answer, and the coach immediately, okay, uh-huh, yeah. And they jump in and they put this filler language in. And I think, I've had many a student tell me, well, I was taught that, it's polite, it's professional to acknowledge that the other person is speaking. Now, I would like to propose that that actually comes from back when we still used phones that were corded to the wall, when we couldn't see each other and people were expecting to be acknowledged. It comes from the era of look at me when I'm talking to you. And so that whole concept of looking at people and nodding our head and acknowledging. And at the same time, just think about it for a moment. Think back to a time in your life when you were speaking to somebody and you had something important to convey, and they looked you dead in the eye. They looked right at you as you spoke. They nodded their head. They said, uh-huh, okay, yup. And maybe even they could parrot back what you had said. But were they really listening? Were they present in the moment? I mean, the ICF has an entire competency called maintaining presence. Are you maintaining the presence with a client by throwing in filler language? I would like to propose to you that no, you're not actually maintaining your presence. In many cases, you're actually interrupting the client's thought process. If the client is in a creative space, they're tapped into their neocortex, and you go, okay, uh-huh, it can cause them to drop out of the access to the neocortex and go into the limbic brain. Our limbic brain, our mammalian brain, our relational brain, when somebody says okay or great or uh-huh, we often hear that as evaluative. We hear it as they're weighing in. And so suddenly the client is, they're all up in their thought, and the coach goes, great. And it pops them back out of their thought process. It interrupts the thinking. It throws speed bumps into their flow as they move through the coaching conversation. Now, often new coaches, especially, will ask, well, Tony, what do I put in there instead? How do I let the client know that I'm listening? And one of my favorite ways to say it is simple. The client will know you're listening by the quality of the question that follows. The client will know you're listening by the quality of the question that follows. So instead of jumping in the second the client is done speaking and going, uh-huh, yeah, take a breath, a silent breath. Just take a nice deep breath in, formulate your question, and immediately go into your question. If the question is high quality and contains a good backtrack, 1, 2, 3 keywords that the client used previously that you've pulled in and inserted into your question, the client will never question whether or not you're listening, because your question is always going to be spot on in that moment, the question that fits everything that's been said up to that moment. When you are doing that, there's no question whether or not that you are listening. So again, be careful of those filler languages because it gets in the way of the client's thinking. Now, imagine for a moment a little bit different situation. The client has hit a very vulnerable space. They're in the middle of coaching, or sorry, telling the coach, they're in the middle of telling the coach something they've never told anyone before, something from their past, something heartfelt. Maybe it's an idea that's been percolating in their mind for years, and they're finally willing to share it and open up. And the client gets a sentence in, and the coach, uh-huh, yeah, okay. It's interrupting. Just sit back and listen. A huge piece of this is just the coach being comfortable in the silence, letting the client have the space to think. I feel like most of the filler language, first off, it's unconscious. Most coaches don't even realize they're doing it until they record themselves and hear themselves doing it. And then they cringe every time that they do it because they notice how much it's getting in the way. In addition to that, I believe that it is the coach not being comfortable in silence, just sitting in silence, allowing themselves to process. What did the client just say? What do I want to ask next? They're not wanting to sit in that. And so often, beyond the filler language, often coaches will start to parrot back what the coach has said. Oh, well, Mr. Client, you said this, and you said that, and then you said this, and that's got me wondering. And then here comes the coaching question. Instead of all of that, the coach would be much better served by simply going, coaching question, being clear and distinct. Now, often in this case, when I've given that advice, new coaches, especially again, will come and be like, well, Tony, the client's asking me, are you listening? Are you with me? Are you there? And yes, that may happen if you're on the phone and you don't have video, but if you're using Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or some other, Teams, etc., that has video, they will know that you're there. They're not thinking about you not being there and being present, especially when the quality of your question is solid. When you come in with a really insightful question, an in the moment question that is customized and created for that client with that topic according to your session agenda, they absolutely know that you are listening. They'll also adjust to that style. If you have a little bit longer pauses before you ask a question, the client will adapt to the style very quickly. I've also found that the filler language tends to drive the conversation. It drives the entire conversation to go faster than it needs to go. Coaches who use a lot of filler language use a lot more words. I've loaded this up. I've actually done some studies. I've taken coaching sessions that were coaches used no filler language and coaches that use a lot of filler language. And the coaches that use a lot of filler language use around 40% more words per minute than a coach who doesn't. They say a lot more filler. They're just filling the space with jabber, not getting right to the point and to the question. I've also seen in my own observation, a lot of coaches that use filler language also use run-on questions. They'll ask 2 and 3 questions at once because, again, they're not allowing their brain to land on the question, ask the question, stop. Let the client speak. Coach prepares for the next question and asks. The flow is entirely different. And what I have found is when the flow is very fast, when the whole conversation is going quick, both the client and the coach are going quick, the client rarely stops and goes, oh, let me think about that for a moment, or, oh, that's a good question. So coaches, slow down, use the silence, plan your question, create your question in that moment, and then ask it in a nice tempo and tone that allows the client to go inside and to then be able to tap into something new, to be able to create that space. Coaching is all about creating the space for our client to open up into new ideas. If we're going 90 miles an hour, that's probably not going to happen because they're just going to be telling you all the things that they already know, that they've already thought, and they're trying to keep up with your pace. So slow it way down, breathe, and ask your question. Now, I'm sure somebody out there watching this video is going, yeah, but it can't be that simple. I've got to say something. I've got to do something. And I would say, no, actually, you don't. Just practice your silence. Practice that moment of pause and reflection for yourself. I promise you, your clients will adjust. I have heard some amazing sessions without a single filler. Often the coach is pausing for 2 to 5 seconds, which is a very long time if you're not used to that. But the coach pauses, takes a note, comes back, looks at the client, and asks a really great question. Those tend to be the most powerful conversations that I've ever heard. It's the ones where the coach uses a pause and a very clean, short, well thought out question with a good, solid backtrack in it. We're going to be talking about backtracking in a separate video and the importance of backtracking. Now, also in this conversation of filler language, the filler language often takes the form of a positive affirmation. Okay, good, great, wonderful, yeah. And that creates a different dynamic that we'll also be discussing in another video around affirmations and affirming our clients. So be very careful about that as well, because your client will get used to you jumping in with an okay, great, and they could start to see that as an affirmation that you're agreeing with them. And then if there's a moment where they have an answer and you pause, you reflect, you come in with a really nice question, their limbic brain and sometimes even their reticular brain, the fight or flight brain, will be like, wait, my coach didn't say okay. He didn't say great. He didn't say wonderful. Well, was that not a good enough answer? Did I not answer the question in the way the coach wanted? And that creates an additional set of problems. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to look for our video coming very soon on affirmative language in coaching. If you've got any questions about this conversation on filler words, please feel free to drop a comment down below, and we'll look forward to seeing you in future episodes of The Coaching State, the subtle art of coaching. Thank you and have a great day.